What's up, YouTube? I'm Brett from Rants. As always, guys, if y'all enjoy our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. We're on the road to 1,000, and we hope you guys will help us get there. Now, I do want to bring up that right now YouTube creators are having a hard time getting their videos seen on or viewed on here on YouTube. So if you do enjoy our content, please hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so that when we upload our new videos, you'll be the first to see it. Now, I want to say this before I go any further. Here on Rants or Us, Lance and I are huge Star Wars fans, but we are not huge Kathleen Kennedy fans. If y'all haven't noticed already with all my bad mouthing of Kathleen Kennedy. Nothing personal. I don't know the woman. But I will say this. I think she ran probably what was one of the greatest franchises into the ground. But I will be the first, or me and Lance will be the first to tell you that if she does something good and she makes quality content, we'll tell you. And we'll praise it. And we'll praise her. Because that's what we want. Above all, we are Star Wars fans. And I'm not like some of these fans that's out there right now. You know, and I see where they're coming from. I really do. Where now they love Star Wars for 30 years, but they hated the sequel series. And now it's like every time that Disney comes out with something new with Star Wars, even The Mandalorian, they got to hate on it. Because it's Disney, they feel like that's the hill they're going to die on, and they're cool with that. I'm not personally that way. I'm not going to choose sides on that. Like I said, if Disney makes quality content, I'll praise it. If they don't, I'll attack it. Simple as that. I don't think that... I'm not one of those that's going to say that the original series was perfect. Prequels weren't perfect. But compared to the sequel series, they're pretty darn close. I mean, that's the way I feel towards it. But at least compared to the sequel series. But I feel like The Mandalorian, even though season 2 has been great in my book. Probably the best Star Wars I've seen, well, almost my entire life. Let's just put it that way. But I will say this. It made a crucial mistake, I feel like, in episode 4 of The Siege. And that was, it tried to bring back the worst of the prequels while reminding you of the sequels. And by this, let me do this little runaround real quick of why I say that. Because The Mandalorian, if there's one thing about The Mandalorian, it is a show that doesn't really want to stand on its own. It wants you to remember the past. That's why there's all these little Easter eggs in it. And I don't know why it's that way. It is a good show. And it doesn't have to do this. But it wants you to be reminded of the past. It's almost kind of like the way the sequel trilogy did. Where they were, they brought back Han. And they brought back Luke Skywalker and Leia and all that. They brought them back. And they wanted you to see them just for a brief instant so you'd be attracted to them and, go pay money to see their films just for that brief cameo. Then they wanted to kill them off because they wanted to introduce you to these boring new characters that they come up with. I'll just straight up say that because there was none of those characters that really had any life to them. They were all boring to me. There's no character that I look back on during the sequel trilogy and I go, wow, that's a character that I'll remember and I want to see like a spin-off show of. There wasn't those characters. But the Mandalorian was trying. They brought back Midichlorians from the prequels, and that was the worst of the prequels. And maybe it was some kind of callback to the prequels, because, like I said, the Mandalorian really doesn't want to stand on its own. So that was a callback that never should have been made. That was a really controversial thing back in the day. Before the sequel trilogy was made, Midichlorians was the worst mistake George Lucas ever made. Disney, or was the worst mistake Star Wars had ever made, was creating Midichlorians. And now that they made it canon again, is just mind blowing. I don't know where they're even going with this. Another thing that they did was Snoke in a, I don't know, glass jar, I guess you could say. I don't know what you call those things. But, where he's just floating around up in there. Or something that looks a lot like Snoke, which is clones. Them bringing that into The Mandalorian was so ridiculous. Because why would you want as much hate as what most Star Wars fans have for the way the sequel series trilogy turned out, and then you want to bring that part back into it? You want to remind fans that what they're watching with The Mandalorian has something to do with the sequel trilogy? It's crazy. Maybe it's maybe they've got some kind of weird idea of saying, you know what, we're going to flesh out this a little bit more and see if maybe now fans will relate to it and like it. But it's just not going to work. It's just not going to work. I'm done with Snoke. I was done with Snoke after The Last Jedi. I don't want to see him. I don't want to know how he was created. I don't want to know why he was created. I just don't want anything to do with him. I was really excited going into The Last Jedi of thinking, okay, we're going to have probably a Snoke versus Luke Skywalker fight going. Like, that was what I envisioned in my mind. And then instead what we got was Luke Skywalker drinking, I don't know, alien cow titty milk. And then you had Snoke saying to Rey this really cool line of, well, I read every thought that comes in your mind and blah blah blah, all this, and there's nothing that you and Kylo Ren can even think about without my knowledge of it first. And then as soon as he says it, Kylo cuts him in half with his lightsaber. That was stupid. That was stupid. That was a line that will always haunt Star Wars because it didn't make any sense. Like it was a cool line at first, sound really ominous, and then it was just ruined in a split second. But that was the way the sequel series worked. They would do something cool only to backtrack on it almost immediately. But I feel like The Mandalorian just should have stayed away from it. Mandalorian has got to learn to stand on its own 2 feet. It's got to learn that, okay, Jon Favreau has something going here. He needs to continue going down this road. Dave Filoni has something going with a lot of these things with what he's doing. These are the future creators of Star Wars. These are the guys that Kathleen Kennedy needs to move over and let them take charge, because they're actually fans of Star Wars. They know what they're doing. They're not going to just push identity politics for the sake of pushing identity politics. They're not going to ruin something that they love to push their own agendas. And that is what Star Wars needs right now. But Star Wars did not need to be reminded of midichlorians, nor did it need to be reminded of the sequel trilogy with The Mandalorian. That will only make those haters of The Mandalorian, that were the ex-Star Wars fans, that were pissed off by the sequel trilogy, trilogy, that will only infuriate them more, knowing that there's Snoke, or clones that look like Snoke, and maybe they're going to tell a little bit, or maybe go down that line of telling his origin stories. If they go down that road, those haters are going to mix in together with the Twitter crowd, and they're going to tear this show apart. And it pisses me off that they did this. Like, such a terrible, terrible mistake that really should have been avoided altogether. But it was just there so that fans will go, you know what? I remember this. It's this whole memberberry thing. Like, hey, remember this, remember that, remember this, remember that. No, we don't need to remember those things. Midichlorians need to be forgotten. Snoke needs to be forgotten. Let's just go with what we got. Hey, you know what? Baby Yoda's better than this. You know, the Mandalorian. I wish I could see Pedro Pascal's face. Maybe in season 3. But he's still better than this. All of these, Ahsoka Tano coming on the show. Let's get excited about that. But let's not rehash the prequel, the worst part of the prequels, and then try to flesh out the sequel trilogy for anything. Let's forget those. Let's let the Mandalorian stand on its own. It needs to show the guts to do this, and if it doesn't, I'm telling you, it's going to get tore apart, and it's not going to last. It might last to season 3, but it won't last beyond that, and it could really hurt Star Wars in the future if the Mandalorian turns out to be a huge failure. But anyways, guys, let me know what y'all think. I'm disappointed in that, but I hope I'm wrong. But leave a comment down below and let me know what y'all think. Take care, guys.